Welcome to the Game Nights, where we not only bring the edge to reviews of movies and video games, but we also defend pop culture, because it needs defending these days, because there's a lot of crap being made. And on that note, I recently saw Shang-CHI and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and I want to share my thoughts of it with you in this review. So, if you're just there for a good, fun popcorn flick, I think people are going to enjoy it, and I think Shang-CHI is going to get a positive reception by most reviewers because they don't hold it to a more critical standard of plot consistency and also how engaging. Sometimes they do hold it to the engaging characters, but I think people are going to be giving Shang-CHI too much of a pass because, in all honesty, old Shang is not an engaging character. He's not, fully engrossed. He's not hugely fun to follow. I mean, compared to people like Iron Man and Captain America, unfortunately, there's very little there to be engaged with. But the action is a lot of fun, and there's a lot of spectacle, and unfortunately, that's kind of the only thing a lot of people really want and ask for and need. I mean, if Transformers can be a financial success, well, if you like Transformers, chances are you're going to like Shang-CHI. But overall, if you had actually look at some more, I guess, what I feel are significant standards for plot, character, justification, but also engagement, when you're engaged with the conflict and things, yeah, Shang-Chi's pretty darn poor. I would actually give it maybe a 3 out of 10. You could push me to 4 because the action is pretty good. And so you have all those elements to it. But in terms of many other things, like I said, well, that's pretty poor. And I'm going to get into them right now. So that is the spoiler-free section of this review. We're getting into serious spoilers now as to a few things that worked, but the many things that failed in this film to make it boring, dumb, and boring, yeah, from a story point, yeah, it's boring. But it's also very dumb from a plot point of view. The biggest failing for me in this film is something that actually is prominent through the entire movie. We actually introduce this from the very beginning, and it stays consistently all the way through to the end. And it's not actually Shang-Chi, it's his father, whom we're not really given the name. Technically he's supposed to be the Mandarin from the comics, but they crap on that name in the movie, and it's like, you named me after some guy pretending he pretended to be me, and he named himself after an orange and stuff, and it's like, okay, well, there's one way to crap all over an established character, his character name and everything like that. It would have been good if he kind of said, it was a dumb name, but I'm going to embrace it, or something like that, where he'll go through all that. Now, it's not the name that is the problem, it's the dad, alright? The guy who's supposed to be the Mandarin, who we don't really know his name, so it's like the warlord, the immortal person, the bad guy, right, everything. So, oh my goodness, could they, it's hard to imagine that for them to have picked a less intimidating villain than this guy. And this guy, so much of the conflict of this film is resting on him and also his plans, his desires, okay? He's causing a lot of the bad stuff to happen. And the central conflict of the film is actually the relationship between the dad and Shang-Chi, his son. And so the conflict that's supposed to be resonating, underlying this whole film is portrayed like a wet rag. Is that just unengaging? And so he has this kind, gentle, fatherly face, and that would work for many roles. Not this one. This one, the Mandarin, like the evil bad guy, the leader of the Ten Rings, should be threatening, intimidating, almost unstable with his rage. You don't know what he's going to do next. He should just wipe everyone out, everything like that. He should convey deep menace and rage at times, and anger and control and power and threat. And this guy has none of it. Like, he's always just so gentle and calm. And even when he's, trying to yell at the main character, Shang-Chi, he's like, you've always been afraid. I didn't feel it at all. Like this, I'm sorry for the actor, he could suit many roles. He did not suit this role at all. And so it was like impossible for me. Look, you might say this is a subjective thing, but I think you could actually point to some more objective things like, look at how calm he always is, look at how gentle his face is, look at how softly spoken he is, and everything like that. Maybe the actor could have pulled it off if he was allowed to just be rage-inducing at times, and unhinged and unpredictable and vicious and menacing. But we got none of that. There was none of that from this guy. And so that could be a failing in directing, in writing, or it could be the failure of the actor and he just didn't suit the role. But so much of the film rested on this character being portrayed as the proper villain, as someone with threat, someone we're worried about, someone we're afraid of, and we could feel it as the audience. I felt none of that. You could say it's subjective, but I think absolutely, if you were to hit these more objective standards that I've been talking about, the character would have been so much more significant in the film, and the film would have been so much more emotionally impactful as a result. But no, we have this wet rag of a villain who's just like, I'm going to go do this thing, blah, and he's always so soft-spoken and everything. He's not the villain. And so it was just like, so much of the film became boring because of that. Now, that's just in terms of the portrayal, I like his representation stuff and also his delivery, but there are problems in the writing as well because we never see him really do anything hugely evil. I mean, he, gets revenge against the people that, killed his wife. But we see some hero characters doing that. It's not necessarily a whole, he's aggressive, he's violent, but we even see some heroes sometimes doing that in their own comic book arcs and things. He conquers and stuff, and he tries to invade a magical bullcrap land that, because he wants to bring back his dead wife. He's not, there's nothing hugely villainous. Yeah, there's some bad things he does, but nothing next level villainous, and he doesn't feel like a villain as a result. And so that's a problem in the actual writing side of this character, and because we never see him do anything really heavy, really impactful, it's like, why are we afraid of this guy? I mean, so it's such a failure for the main villain, the father, the cause of the central conflict of the film, and if the film fails at this, one of the most important aspects of the film, because the conflict this character is creating is what the entire film is resting upon. If they fail at that, well, you can imagine that the whole film fails dramatically as a result. And then there are so many other issues that I'm going to be getting into there. But if I was to pick the biggest failure of Shang-Chi, that is it right there. The Mandarin himself, who was not really a Mandarin, and he is nothing to be afraid of, and his motivations aren't particularly evil, and also, so there's supposed to be a really big conflict between the dad and the son. I mean, in terms of jerk a-hole parents, he isn't up there amongst the top. I mean, he was a good father while the mum was alive. When the mum died, you never find out that he blamed the son really until the final fight, where he then comes out and blames him. And that was never something that comes up previously to set up the conflict between the father and son. We get told that he couldn't look at his daughter because the daughter reminded him too much of his wife, and so he neglected her, but there was nothing actually said that he neglected his son. He trained his son in a very aggressive fashion, but at no point are we told by Shang-Chi or revealed that Shang-Chi necessarily resented that. I mean, he has these awesome, crazy kung fu skills. Was it painful? Well, it was pain conditioning and stuff. We're not shown or told that Shang-Chi hated his father for training him so much. We're not told in depth or any reason that is truly impactful why Shang-Chi hates his dad. His dad sends him on a mission to kill the guy that led the men to kill the dad's wife and Shang-Chi's mother. And so Shang-Chi goes, and it's revealed that he does it. He kills the guy that killed his mum as he took revenge. Does he resent his father for it? He went through with what his father asked him for what seems to be reasons that he agreed with. He wants to kill this guy too because he killed his mum. And so we're not told that, I wish I didn't do it, or he said he thinks that his girlfriend might hate him because he's a monster now, but we're not told that he necessarily wholly regrets it. This is the guy that killed his mum. And so, again, what are the reasons that's making him truly hate his dad? And then he leaves, mainly because he decides, I guess, he doesn't want to be an assassin or doesn't want to be a crime person. And that's really it. I think, and we have to read between the lines because we're not told or shown this, or if we are, it's only very slightly, but we're not really given or shown the true resistance at how much Shang-Chi doesn't want to be like his dad, because we're not showing how evil his dad is in really any impactful ways, and we're not showing any extreme levels of cruelty that his dad inflicted upon the son. And so the reasons for the conflict between the dad and the son have far less weight when it comes to the actual conflict and showdown, because Shang-Chi doesn't seem to have been impacted too much by that. Like, when we see him in, San Francisco or whatever, I forget which city it is, if I get it wrong, he seems to be a well-adjusted guy with super kung fu skills. His life doesn't seem to be too messed up, in all honesty. It's like, and you hate your dad because it's about, good, hate your dad for being a bad guy, but maybe what if he saw his dad do something really terrible that freaked him out, and but it would be far better if you saw his dad do something terrible to him, or someone he loved, or something like that, to make the conflict have more emotional weight. But there was none of it. And so the final confrontation between the father and son in the end of the film was a limp wet rag. That's my word. I'm using I think it conveys the kind of imagery I'm going for. It's just like, oh yeah, you beat your dad, and the whole thing like, you've been afraid your whole life. So the father said, you've been afraid of your whole life, and everything like that. But Shang-Chi never showed any fear in previous, like, it was just a weak, void, empty taunt that we know as the audience wasn't true, because Shang-Chi has shown great bravery throughout the whole film. He's never been crippled by fear in any way. And so again, emotionally weightless, not impactful at all. The final conflict between the father, just sucked as a result. And so and it's funny, as I was saying before, it's this whole central conflict between Shang-Chi and his dad, and the dad being the villain, needing to create the menace, that just fails dramatically. And so the film fails as a whole, even if it got so many other things right. Well, it doesn't. It gets a lot of other things wrong, which it just compounds how bad this film actually is when you start to break it down. There are narrative problems, big narrative problems in this film, and it starts at the very beginning, where we're introduced to the dad, the bad guy, and he has magical bullcrap rings because we don't know where they come from. Admittedly, I think that is supposed to be a mystery that they're trying to reveal, because it's an after credit scene, they're analysing the rings and they don't know where they come from. And okay, if they wanted to make that a mystery, that's fine, but they're not defined properly as to what their true capacity is. They give someone immortality, crazy kung fu ability and stuff, and they can shoot off and come back. And by shooting them off, he can propel himself in jumps, and he can spin them around to create like a shield from arrows, and he can block projectiles with them, and then they shoot and come back. That seems to be the how these rings operate. It's a vast, massive divergence from the original source material of the rings that the Mandarin actually had. The original Mandarin had 10 rings he wore on his fingers, not bracelets. And technically they're bracelets, but no, they just call them the rings. And I think they did it because it was like some different kung fu-y cool type of weapon, or it looked like a kung fu to it. It's not a traditional kung fu weapon, but it was like, in a lot of kung fu they sometimes have really outlandish kind of weapons, and I think they did that to make this feel like more of a kung fu-y weapon, instead of the original Mandarin with his rings, and the individual rings gave him certain interesting powers, more powers and capacity, I feel, than what we see the Mandarin actually use with his bracelet rings. And so anyway, he gets them, right? And he creates an organization, and one of the things that first, this doesn't make sense for me, was when it says, then he moved into the shadows. They're saying he's conquering, he's kicking butt, he's gaining power, and the prime motivation for him is gaining power. Again, this is another big problem because they don't follow through or reveal or show that accurately at all, to the point that he's obsessed with power. He isn't. He's obsessed with getting his wife back at the end. His quest for power doesn't really come through is shown properly. He's after power, and then he goes into the shadows. I'm thinking, okay, give us a reason why. So far, he's kicking butt and taking names, and there's no reason at all to explain why he needs to go in the shadows, or go into underground, or go into hiding, okay? Did he come across someone else who was really great power, or he was gaining too much prominence and put a target on his back, and no matter how much power he get, he knew he couldn't fight against the world combined strength against him, or that there was other superhumans in the world with other powers that could potentially threaten him, so to keep the power and influence he had, he decided to take his organization underground. Perfect explanation. Would have worked fine. We're given none of that. And so I'm just left thinking, why? And the audience should not have to explain plot holes like this, okay? If the audience needs to explain plot holes with their own headcanon, like making things up, that's a failure. It shows a distinct failing in the writing itself. The audience should not have to do that. And oftentimes, because when the audience does make up their own headcanon to explain it, it's later contradicted because that's not the actual reason or headcanon that the writers have, and obviously the writers just aren't creative enough. Because there are some baffling things that happens in the writing, and I'm just wondering, like, and it shows a massive lack of creativity from the writer's perspective, and a lack of writing skill, in all honesty. And so this is just a small example of like, okay, interesting. They go into the shadows for no reason, and you know, the Ten Rings becomes one of those secret underground organization, toppling government, manipulating the flow of world events and everything. It's like, okay, how many do we have this in the MCU? We had Hydra, Winter Soldier program, Black Widow program, toppling governments, manipulating things, and now the Ten Rings. It's like, I get the feeling that, you know, one of these organizations topples a government or manipulates world events, and one of the other organizations, hey, we didn't want that to happen, we just did the exact and they end up they do something, and then another one reverses it, and another one reverses it again, and it becomes, instead of actually achieving their goal, they just end up firing each other. Because, like, oh my goodness, do they ever run into problems like, oh, you're trying to assassinate, oh, we're trying to assassinate him too, but we want to, no, you want to go, oh, we'll fight. It's so dumb. With this many underground organizations, the world would be in complete utter chaos. Like, how the hell? Was there any organizations fighting them? That would be interesting. What a story there is. Like, maybe, because with the Black Widow program and the Ten Rings and Hydra and Winter Soldier, and there's probably going to be more because they don't think of the consequences of this type of world building and stuff. Without, who's actively been fighting against them? It seems like they've just controlled the world for the whole time since their existence. It's just baffling, and again, done world building without really considering the implications. Would work much better if the Ten Rings was struggling for power. They never really was able to topple governments or everything, but they've always been like smuggling, terroristic kind of organization and stuff, always on the brink of the survival, because that would make more sense with the Ten Rings organization that we see in Iron Man 1, a terrorist kind of group without too many resources and stuff. Maybe it's because the Mandarin, he disappeared for ages, and they also leadership and therefore power base, something like that. He went into, because we're given nothing to explain what he's actually been doing for whatever how many thousand years. Like, if he truly was working at gaining power for so many thousand years, his organization should be like globe spanning in its influence and has cells everywhere, and all we're given is like this compound in the hills. What have you been doing for several thousand years, mate? It would have been made much more sense if they just said, he lost the rings in a great battle between something, maybe, the village or the mother or whatever, or he gave it up for however many thousand years, and that would vastly better explain why the Ten Rings are so weak in the state of the film when the film contextualizes that they've been around for thousands of years, kicking butt and taking names, and all that stupid stuff. Unexplained. And this also contradicts that idea of the dad seeking power for however many thousands of years. It was really at it for that long, period of time with the focus intensity he has. What he should have heaps more power, heaps more influence, money. It's just like, how much power do you have by the end of this? You have a crappy little terrorist organization. It doesn't really seek power, and it also isn't sold. He isn't like. It doesn't show him desperately need when something happens and he doesn't get what he wants, and it doesn't show you like any real huge investment or reason why he needs the power so much. Like, because if something failed and he just went nuts, and he goes crazy for not getting the power or thing or goal that he wanted, that would show you how obsessed he is. This should be an obsession, this quest for power, if it's lasting thousands of years. But it's this casual thing, it's like, oh, yeah, there's this village where they teach the martial arts to the gods. I think I'll go check that out. And there's a woman that's stopping my way. Oh, well, I mean, I guess that my quest and desire and obsession for power has no influence over me when I get a boner or something, because she's hot. I don't for the falling in love thing with the mum is so cringe, because it's like, oh, they're fighting. I like you. You can fight. Is that the foundation? And they explain it. You can't choose who you fall in love with. Kind of can. I mean, you can't really choose who you're attracted to, but I mean, if you find out, this guy's a vicious murdering terrorist, yeah, like, yeah, the mum's supposed to be this virtuous, noble lady from a magical village. I was like, no, I mean, the only way you could really fall in love with this guy if you could live with his terrible... Oh, but he gave up his terroristic ways. Okay, maybe there's something there. But still, they don't show the relationship progress at all. So they fight, and then they're in love, and it doesn't get sold. Like, I wasn't feeling like that was authentic in any measure. I was like, oh, that's cringeworthy. Okay, now they're in love. Sure, whatever. Love through fighting. I mean, hey, girls who can fight, they're hot. I agree. You need a bit more than that, though. So already there's just such poor kind of world-building execution and plot progression. It's okay, dad's doing this, quest for power, falling in love. It's not getting sold convincingly, and there's these issues. And okay, we come to Shang-Chi, and we might have met Shang-Chi before, and then there was flashbacks, but you get where I'm saying and what I'm at. Okay, so we meet Shang-Chi, and he starts off almost likable in some ways. I was thinking maybe there's hope for this guy when he was a bit drunk and it was like, hey, chauffeur, or not chauffeuring, whatever, valeting is great, you need people skills, you need driving skills and stuff. It was like, maybe there was something there, but then, again, it all felt flat. There wasn't really any true emotional arc for him. Where did he change at all? Was he really struggling against fear, was he afraid of, great little arc you could have done if he had this rage that would burst out when he fights, which is why he decided to hide his kung fu skills, because he's afraid of becoming like his dad, because he has this viciously aggressive tendency when he really gets into the fight. And that becomes an arc through the film where he has to try and hold back, and at the beginning he kind of fails, and he would have murdered someone if the girlfriend doesn't stop him, or something gets in his way to stop and everything, but that freaks him out that he's going to be like his dad, and much better arc, okay? Something that we could have really latched onto as an audience to be endeared to this character's thing, and the character doesn't want to be a psycho. That's kind of a good character trait, but he has this capacity for fighting and violence and stuff, and then ultimately he finds peace and balance by being taught the right way in the magical bullcrap village place by his aunt. It's done by that famous Chinese actress. She's in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and then the final confrontation with his dad. He beats his dad, and he could have murdered him, and he does, and he holds back to show that he's nothing like his dad to his dad's face. Much better arc right there. So we don't have any real underlying struggle or conflict that has weight, real significant weight for Shang-Chi, and because of that is a wet rag of a character too, very blank slate. Is like, he has some funny, more charismatic moments, but nothing close to Tony Stark or anything like that. And so it comes off feeling very bland and dull, honestly, the main character, which is kind of a problem if this is going to be your main character of the film. And so we're introduced to seeing Shang-Chi, shows slight promise, falls flat, and then he gets attacked. So it's a couple of issues here about the attack of the goons, okay? First is the father's plan. The father wants to get the pendant, put some on my glasses, wants to get the pendant that his children have, because he figured out somehow his wife left for him a map, which is a magical water map hidden in a wooden stacked carving of a dragon, that if you put the pendants in the eyes, the map comes out. How did he find that out? He just gets the pendants, is like, yeah, and he knows exactly where they go. And like, did the mother leave him a note? He said the mother left him clues. It's like, okay. Must be pretty interesting clues, or very specific clues for him to know exactly what to do, because that was bizarre. Okay, so anyway, he needs the pendants, but there's another motive. He wants to bring his children back. He let his children out to live in the world, be their own people for 10 years, and now it's time for them to come into the fold and rejoin the 10 rings, be his heir and everything like that. And so if his intention is to get his children to rejoin the fold, you would think sending goons to steal from them and then try to murder them if they don't hand over the pendant would be kind of counterintuitive, counterproductive to your ultimate goal in getting them to be on your side and be a happy family. But no, you send goons, try to kill them basically, and then think, oh, they'll be fine joining me again. You freaking idiot. What plan is that? Okay, sure. And I mean, you didn't really need to steal a bit, you just needed to borrow for a couple minutes. And so instead of stealing a pendants, if your goal was to get your kids back anyway, the goons could have just said, your dad needs to see you. They might have resisted, and then the fight broke out there, but he seemed more resentful of them wanting to take the last heirloom of his mother than if they just said, it's time to return. He thought he was in hiding, and Shang-Chi might have just submitted because he knows he can't fight his dad in that regard, and they're just after him. But no, you're going to take the last heirloom of my mother? Well, then he's going to have issues. I feel more issues than just having to see my dad again. Crap. And then, I mean, so there's a big fight, and this is where one of the other issues comes in. In recent Marvel films, for some reason, they have just decided to forget that guns exist and they're really useful. I mean, bad guys would use guns, obviously, and they've done it in our past Marvel films. Like, look at Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier is using guns. Bad guys are using guns. And Captain America has to fight and take account of the guns and get out of the way and get cover. Same with Black Widow in Winter Soldier. But then it's so many other movies that just, let's not use guns. I'll use a machete that comes out of my hand. If you have a hand, what about a gun on your hand? The technology for that. And a gun is a vastly more dangerous weapon than, a sword on your hand. Hey, I love swords, okay, but I'm not an idiot. It's like, I need to subdue this super kung fu trained guy. Should I try and fight him on a ground that he has more capacity to resist with like a sword, a really hot burny sword that melts through things? Or should I just pick up a gun? Can Shang-Chi dodge bullets? He probably can, but still, I mean, you'd think a gun would be more effective. Now, this actually comes into the larger discussion that I'm going to be releasing a video, it might be out already, I'm not sure, on my main channel, Shadowversity, about the rule of cool. Because ultimately, the reason why they didn't give the bad guys the guns is because they wanted a really cool action kung fu fight. That's what they wanted. And they wanted a guy with a sword in his hand because it's cool. They wanted the cool factor. My main point, and I explain and give more reasons why, and also give reasons how you can approach it properly, is if you want something cool for the rule of cool, you need to justify it, explain it, and you can do it so easily. So many ways you could have done it. And so it would have been so easy to have the guys start with guns, and then Shang-Chi do a super kung fu thing, disarm them quickly from the guns, but then now they don't have guns anymore because they were disarmed, gets into a regular fight, and you can then have the blade come out as his backup in case he loses his gun. Perfectly justified. Makes sense. But because they don't do anything like that, I'm just left thinking, these goons are morons. Look how good Shang-Chi, just use a friggin' gun! And you tell me, the 10 Rings, dumbest terrorist organization in the world. I mean, well, they had guns back in Iron Man's time, but not anymore. They're using like these Chinese hook swords with electric shock capacity and these weird, crossbow thingies that shoot like electro-tasing things that doesn't kill anyone. It's like, it's a good thing that this evil terrorist organization has decided to move to non-lethal weapons. Very progressive of them. This is a new progressive 10 Rings terrorist organization that doesn't like to kill people. Do you see what I mean about the bad guys not having menace, like you're not no threat? They're barely using lethal weapons, and yeah, the sword and knives and stuff, but like the hooky swords, you get hit and they get zapped by them, not killed, and then they have the crossbow things. Okay. This terrorist organization is stupid and useless. And so, yeah, they decided to just fight Shang-Chi without weapons. And Shang-Chi, and look, the actual fight choreography is really exciting. I thought it was a lot of fun, a lot of visual spectacle, really cool action kung fu stuff. Props to the film there. I think the film actually succeeds with some really cool fight scenes. But there's no emotional weight behind it, and a lot of them are built on utter stupidity as to justify the reason why the fight is happening in the first place, because the dad, because this is the thing, right? So Shang-Chi, he gets beaten, he flies over, he takes his girlfriend with him for whatever, reasons, not a good, smart idea. There's issues with the sister, but I'm going to jump ahead and then come back to the issues with the sister, when the dad, of course, sends his goons to get the sister. And then they fight them off, and ultimately the dad just comes in and subdues him instantly. He was going to go there personally anyway. I mean, you're going to, how many of you guys died? I remember one guy actually fell off the building and stuff. And so you're losing resources, manpower, and sending your goons, which ultimately achieves nothing because you go there personally and subdue them anyway. So why didn't you just lead with that? Just do it, just walk in and beat them and of course reveal the pacing and stuff. No, you could have sold it. Or you could have had that the dad just wasn't there and they were ultimately subdued by the goons, because it gives more menace to the goons and stuff, but no. So big contradictions there, and the dad just comes in anyway and subdues them, so there's no point to send the goons in the first place. Okay, so Shang-Chi, he gets his girlfriend. So some people are saying the girlfriend is not funny and she's actually cringeworthy and distraction thing. Look, enough people laughed in the cinemas at the girlfriend jokes and stuff that I think it was justified to put her in. For a casual audience, I think they're going to enjoy her. And look, yeah, there's moments that are funny enough. And so I don't have too much criticism with the girlfriend thing, except for the fact that he takes her along into a really deadly situation and she's no discernible skills. So that part is dumb. You could try and justify it a bit more. They did justify her usefulness a little bit because she's a valet driver with her boyfriend, Shang-Chi, and she is not a good person. She basically borrows, but takes it illegally to go for a joyride in some guy's really fancy cars. Like, doesn't actually make me think you're a good person doing that. But establishes that she's a reckless driver, but establishes that she must be able to drive somewhat competently, and that comes in later in the film when they need to drive through the magical bullcrap forest to get to the magical bullcrap village, and so. She does the driving, and she's a better driver than anyone else there, so is that justify her presence? Not really. I think you could have done it without her, and I think it was still done to take her along, but you want the comic relief, so okay, alright, we can let that one slide. Gets to the place where the sister is, and the sister has a fighting ring, and what a waste of bringing back Abomination. Is that the guy? The guy that Hulk fights in the first, Incredible, well, not the Eric Banner one. I forget his name. But the one that's based in the MCU, okay? That bad guy comes back, and it feels like a big letdown. It's just, he's there just for, he's fighting, and he's shown that the guy from Doctor Strange, whatever his name is, I forget, broke him out and then let him, and then he's happy to go back in his position. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. But he's there. There's a fight. And then Shang-Chi just agrees to get in the fight. The justification is pretty weak. It's like, look, if you fight, risk your, I don't know, is it risking your life? These guys are pretty powerful who you're fighting and things. There's one guy that gets like a dagger thrown into him, so I think this could be to the death. And it's like, yeah, I'll risk my life in this illegal fighting ring just because you'll show me where my sister is. Okay? And the sister then, he ends up, his opponent is his sister. And his sister just mercilessly kicks him in the balls and kicks the crap out of him, even though Shang-Chi isn't trying. So the sister is a bit of an a-hole. But that is actually reinforced by the very last end credit scene, because she then decides to take over the 10 rings. So she's going to be a terrorist as well. So her moral compass is obviously skewed, and it's reinforced and intentional. So okay, she's an a-hole to Shang-Chi, and it's confirmed and reinforced. But she's also dumb, because if she's trying to hide from her dad, being your name getting announced in the fight and stuff, and Shang-Chi saying, it's like, okay, well, your dad would probably know where you are. You're on TV screens. Good work. And then the dad arrives, because finally Shang-Chi says that he's after the pendant. The dad arrives, and the sister just nopes out, like, yeah, screw you, you can die. Again, she's an a-hole. And then when she comes back, right, the justification she gave is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. She's like, why'd you come back? I thought you left, or something. But her answer is, so you know how it feels, because she felt abandoned by Shang-Chi, so she wanted him to feel abandoned. What a friggin' jerk. This character is just, I hate her, okay? Why do Marvel films, so many films, I think, strong female characters are great. One of my favorite films is Alita Battle Angel. Freaking one of the best films. Actually, it's not one of the best, but it's one of the best portrayals of a strong female character in recent memory. Really, really good in that regard. And that's why I love it so much. But in so many other films where they want strong female characters, they think strong means being an a-hole and doing their own thing and treating people like jerks. That's not strong. That's just being a total freaking a-hole. It's like have a look at my review of Masters of the Universe Revelations, where Teela, they want to make a strong female character, and they just make the biggest friggin' female dog character I think I've ever seen portrayed. But that's, I don't know, a writer's oblivious to how real emotional strength is. Not treating people like jerks, okay? Like, there's a lot of other types of strength, emotional strength, and all that stuff you can do. You don't need to kick men in the balls to, you know, have a strong female character. Oh gosh. So yeah, the sister is just a crap, boring, annoying kind of character that's just there and is like, oh, my father abandoned me. And then she taught herself kung fu better than the masters teaching Shang-Chi. It says it in the film. So they wouldn't teach me, so I taught myself, and I taught myself better. No, that's not how it works. Shang-Chi is freaking getting hit by staffs for pain resistance, pain conditioning and stuff like that, and you're just swinging a bloody rope around. What, you taught yourself better than intensive, really intensive physical training? Bullcrap. Not a chance. Okay, come off it. Ugh. And look, maybe if there was something they gave to just look, because you can sometimes get away with this if you just justify it, all right? How did she teach? Maybe she found a cell, like a buried tome of martial art stuff. Maybe she taught herself the same martial arts that her mother had, something like that. That was just superior, or any other ways. Or the mother, some ghost, I don't know, she found another teacher hidden away in the dungeon. Any number of reasons, right? You don't have to be stretch it too much. But no, she just taught herself. Because girl power? So pathetic. And it does a disservice. If you're really wanting to have a girl power message, you can do that. Just do it right. Otherwise it just comes off as pandering, weak, vapid, and just nonsense. My goodness. Dad takes him back to his compound and is like, yeah, you're just gonna join me now because, oh, you really, he's so dumb. Like, you know, you just always, he said like, there's no way these men could have beat my son, so is that, you know, was it a test then? If it was a test, you could have done it yourself. You didn't need to have your men die in the process and stuff like that, you idiot. So you could really see how tough he was. But no, he's like, my son could have beaten him anyway, and so that's why I wasn't worried. And then, you know, he thinks that, oh, Shang-Chi's just be, yeah, that was great. Thanks for sending your goons after me and almost killing my girlfriend. Yeah, now, it's great to see you. I just joined your terrorist organization now. We're going to be happy, right? You moron. But no, he expects that. He thinks they're just going to join. And then he reveals that he thinks the mother is alive. He's hearing their voice. Okay. I mean, look, if they showed that he was actually being mind controlled to some level, yeah, maybe. But you tell it, like, what logical, rational, intelligent person really believe a voice whispering in their head is proof that the mother is alive? Okay, there's a lot of magic's weird things in the MCU now. You'd think they'd be like, you'd be just a little cautious and skeptical. But no, the dad's an idiot and he accepts it all kind of singer. It's like, oh, the mother's alive and she's hidden in the village. The village is, I mean, he did bury her, right? Like, would you, just to make sure, because at one point I was thinking, what, did the village take her body back? Like, when she died, the village said she belongs in the world, land where she comes from, so they took her body all the way back to the magical village and buried her there, and then at least that might justify somewhat the dad thinking that she could be alive, because there's a magical village placed in another dimension, so he could believe that they have a way to bring her back alive, but then, you know, they are unjustly keeping her from him. But we're not given any explanation. In actual fact, it just seems like, you know, she died and obviously was buried somewhere in a family compound and everything. And so if you're getting messages that but you just want to double check, like, let's exhume the body, see if there's a skeleton remains still there, just to make sure, okay? Just to make sure I'm not hearing voices. But no, he's like, oh, I know she's alive and the village is evil and bad because they're hiding her from me, and I'm gonna... So, how easily he accepts this and so doggedly, and I mean, again, he was obsessed with getting power, wasn't he? But now he's kind of forgotten about that because, oh, look, it makes sense if you get, because he loves his wife so much, doesn't make him look particularly evil or menacing, and you'd think it would have more weight if, you know, he had this big quest to get another thing that gives him power influence, and then he abandons like 100 men in this mission while they're about to topple a government because he felt like he's so convinced that, no, his wife is alive and he'll do it, and it shows how willing he's, how callous he can be, but no, there's nothing like that. He just accepts it, the voice in his head, because he's a moron, and does it. And so Shang-Chi and his sister seem to be on board a little bit. he takes the pendants and does the map thing. It's like, oh, okay. What was the mum's plan? Is that how she wanted? She obviously, like, it's established this. The mum left this. You didn't leave a note for the kids. Like, the kids had the pendants. You'd think they'd be the ones who would be able to find the information about the map. But no, the dad did. The kids had no idea, but they had the pendants and all that stuff. And so maybe she could have just told them when they were alive, or in a cryptic kind of riddle maybe, or poem or something. But so the map makes completely no sense. It's a very elaborate, I thought she lost her powers, okay? She got magical kung fu powers because she's connected to the dragon of the magical land she comes from. But does that mean she can make a magical water map? Like, what is the extended limits of their powers from this place? It's complete, same with the forest. That's why I'd be calling it a bullcrap forest. Like, who made it? What is it running on? There's a sentient force behind it, or is it a program that is just repeating around itself? It's just magic now. Just Marvel is just like, because magic, and that's what I was afraid of when they introduced Doctor Strange, is that they'll just use magic for the sake of magic. Deus ex magica, whatever they want now because it's magic. You don't like, and you could have introduced it good if you had to find rules and stuff, but no, just magic. And with the magic, they could just make a magical bullcrap map thing because magic reasons. There we go. All right, so magical map, and Shang-Chi and his sister seem to be on board with it until the dad says, and if they resist, we'll destroy them all. Like, hang on, we're not going to destroy a whole village, obviously. And the dad actually looks surprised, and then they get thrown into the dungeon. A dungeon which just happens to be open to other prisoners, specifically Kingsley. I forget his name. He's a great actor though. Like, what a waste of a role. Gosh, I feel sorry for this guy. Waste of a great actor in this role. The prison is literally open to the other cell where the fake Mandarin from Iron Man 3 is from. And what a waste. Like, again, I said it was a waste, but it's in this context I'm saying it's a waste of Ben Kingsley's first portrayal of the Mandarin as this kind of Middle Eastern terrorist guy that had a vendetta against superheroes. And then they ruined it by making him a clown. But if they actually did that properly, like, he would have been such a better Mandarin. You had Ben Kingsley playing the Mandarin, and if the menace that he had, like, I will tell you, his performance was great. It was this menacing, evil, impactful thing that turned out to be a joke. And so when I saw they brought back Ben Kingsley, I was half wondering, man, they'd have balls, and it'll be so cool if they actually doubled down and had this goofball idiot realize that he's a clown, and the only time he ever had any true influence in his life was when he was playing the role of the Mandarin, and he decides to make that his new persona. That's his new identity, and his identity overtakes him. And so then he had that in the back of his mind, and at some point in the thing, I was hoping that this would be cool if they did this. They don't. But it'd be cool if they did this, that he finds a time when the dad, the bad guy, is vulnerable, and then Kingsley kills him and then takes the rings for himself, and he becomes the true Mandarin. And it could have worked even better if the rings have some type of mind manipulation that it finds the strongest characteristics in the person and makes them come to the surface, and there's that locked away personality that, the character had that overtakes the rest of his personality and becomes the real Mandarin. I was like, they could have redeemed themselves. They don't. He's a joke in this film just as much as the last one, and they use him in a really kind of convenient way because he just so happens to have a magical bullcrap animal from the magical bullcrap land who can... no reason is given. He can just speak to the animal can speak to him because reasons. Sure. Okay then, fine. He can just speak to this animal thing, that doesn't have a head. Nothing else matters, why should this, right? Okay, he can speak, and the animal now knows a way to get into the magical bullcrap, village on its own. Because the map that it reveals shows that, you can get in, but it's only at a certain time, right? You've got to time it right. But this headless animal says that, oh no, I can show you in anyway. I'm assuming the dad knew the animal was there locked away with Ben Kingsley, right? I'm assuming, it's his compound, it's his dungeon. You didn't find out Ben Kingsley can speak to the animal, and you didn't try and get information from it, you friggin' moron! This dad, remember how I said he wasn't menacingly? The fact that he's so astronomically stupid makes him just completely like, you know, like, what, we're supposed to be intimidated by you? You don't have any menace or threat. You're an idiot. And so, yeah. And then, you know, the sister knows hidden, like, underground passageways in the fortress. That's how she escaped last time. And so she reveals, conveniently, that she knows the secret passageway underground for them to break out. They steal a car, and I was surprised at how quick the door opened for them to leave, because if it opened any slower, they would have been, but conveniently opened really quickly, and conveniently closes on the next car coming behind, and then they escape. And the dad thinks they're just going away. I don't think he knows they're going to the village, because he doesn't, you know, like, he has no reason to believe they have any knowledge of getting in the village is really hard. But they actually race to the village, and luckily, and look, I do, as much of a clown Ben Kingsley's character was, and how much of a waste of a great actor they had in him, I did get a chuckle out of the talk about, you know, the Planet of the Apes. There was a talk about Planet of the Apes and why the character wanted to become an actor when he saw it and things, and it's astronomically stupid. But hey, I chuckled. You know, he's a great actor. He can deliver those lines funnily. Then they go through the magical bullcrap forest, and they get into the village. It turns out the village, like, this film switches gears so dramatically, and it almost gives you whiplash, where at one point you think it's like a struggle between an oppressive father and a terrorist organization. Now it's like this magical Narnia land trying to hold off this great vicious evil, and we're introduced to this bad evil thing very late in the film. We're given no real reasons to be invested in the conflict. It's just this bad thing locked away behind this door, and oh, it's the one feeding your dad this manipulation in your head to go, and then because it's trying to get him to free itself, and so that's why it's been whispering him. How it can whisper to him, we don't know. First, we're given the reasons, like, I think Shang-Chi even asks, how can it do that? And she's like, is he wearing the rings? Implying that it's the rings that are causing the connection. That was like, oh, maybe the rings come from the same place where this bad thing comes from. And she's like, let me explain. She doesn't explain it at all. She goes on this thing about, you know, we are actually a super advanced civilization which still use, you know, bows, arrows, and swords and stuff, but super advanced with massive skyscrapers and stuff. Yeah, I believe that. But this bad thing came, sucking souls, and destroyed us. And we're about to die until the Great Protector came. I don't know why the Great Protector came then, but he protected us, and it was the dragon thing, and they managed to lock it away behind the door. And they don't give the reason why the bad thing, the evil monster thing, can communicate with the dad, or as the rings are doing it. In actual fact, the only thing we're kind of given is the reason why the creature is communicating with the dad with the rings, because the creature believes he has the power to break him free. But that doesn't answer how the creature is able to communicate with someone from another dimension. And they don't say it's actually, well, they sent us through the rings, but they don't explain why, which means it gives a reason there's no reason, and the reason they give it, that reason why they're talking to the dad, is because he has the rings and he has the power to break them out. And if that's the reason, just for someone powerful. Why the dad? There are a lot more powerful people in that universe that would break you out. But no, the dad is after his wife, and maybe if you can trick him and all that stuff. It's very convoluted and dumb. And so then Shang-Chi and his sister are all on board protecting, and the girlfriend wants to help, and so they're like, oh, give her first she helps carrying arrows, and under there someone gives her a bow, and suddenly with a day training she's a great archer, which just really ticks me off. I'm sorry, my soul is dying through this crap. It's such a bad movie. And so it's hard for me to express how I'm feeling. It's like how annoying. Like, I'm an archer, okay? I know how long it takes to even get competent at archery, and so I'm personally offended at how bullcrap it is with a day's training she becomes a master archer. And by the way, day's training, she would barely be able to pull back a 30-pound bow if she's never tried it before, never done anything, and it's implied that she hasn't before. And so you're telling me a 30-pound bow can shoot insane distances like they show in the actual fight scene. And these should be war bows, okay? We're looking at a 70 to 100 pound. It should, like, and 70 pound is the very low range. It should be 100 pound minimum if you're being serious with the war bow range. And she wouldn't be able to pull that for crap. Not a chance, but you know, she's just great. Then they get dragon, I don't know, weapons and stuff, and the bad guys invade. And you see, by this point, I'm just I don't care about anything really. But look, the action is still fun, and so you can enjoy that aspect of it. And yeah, the bad guys come, and then none of them has actual guns. They have these weird crossbow things that shoot taser, electric rope, crap stuff. Because you just rocked up, everyone had like just, you know, some serious firepower, actual ballistic weaponry. All these village people we dead, unless they, like, because again, justified. If you want a cool kung fu action fight scene, justify. They come with guns, they try and shoot, and their magical dragon shields blocks all the bullets. Problem solved. You'd think a terrorist organization like this would have tanks or something. Maybe it would have been cool if they brought a tank or two. You have these kung fu people fight tanks, right? And then there's the fight between Shang-Chi and his dad, because his dad jumps off to try and open the doorway, and Shang-Chi firstly, and there's the confrontation like, you're always weak, you've always been afraid, when he hasn't really been, and so the conflict was really weak and lackluster, and this is supposed to be the big climactic confrontation, and not really. He gets knocked into the water, the dragon says hi to him, takes him out of the water, and then goes to fight his dad. There's something kind of weird happens in the fight. He can gain control of his dad's rings, his bracelet rings, because reasons. It showed that his mum could to him, and that's like the setup that, there's some type of thing in the special kung fu that is in this magical land that enables them to gain control over the rings. No reason is given, and there's really nothing connection that I can see, unless they actually inject one in the world building, to explain why that can be done. These are pretty crappy weapony rings. If some type of person who knows the right kung fu can just gain control of them, which Shang-Chi does. He gains control of 5 of the rings his father. I knew that was going to happen. As soon as I saw Shang-Chi come in his new outfit, his arms only went down to here, like the dad, and he had nothing on his forearms. I was like, oh, he's going to get the rings, obviously. Because why would the arms be open? Like, he's the only person with, like, you know, sleeves up like this, you know, in the ending fight scene, except the dad is like, oh, he's going to get the rings. Okay, yeah, nice giveaway. And yeah, so he gains control of one set of the rings, and then the bad guy breaks free completely because the dad is an idiot. There's this weird monster that this monster was able to conquer like entire planet of an advanced civilization, and so they should be screwed now. They're dead. Everyone's dead, right? Right? I know they have the protector and they have the rings because the dad gets captured by the monster, and instead of using the rings to break free, they're shown to be powerful enough to do pretty significant things. The dad decides to commit suicide and gives the rings to his son. There was nothing explained why, with the extent and capacity of what the rings have been shown to be able to do in this world setting, or in the movie so far, the dad should have had easy enough capacity to break free of the bad monster. But no, it's like, they're trying to say he can't break free. Nah, it felt like he just committed suicide. And I mean, the rings give him immortality as well. And so maybe when the evil monster tries to suck his soul, it can't do it because the rings protect him. That would be a logical, like, application of the rings that is already established through the movie because the rings grant immortality. But no, he's about to be dying. So he gives the rings to his son. Maybe that was his way of forgiving it, saying he's sorry, but he could have broken free and then said, "You're a better fighter than me here." Oh, there's something a bit more dramatic, but gives his. But no, the dad decides, I admit that it makes good thematic sense that the dad dies, but the way he dies is dumb. Maybe, like, he actually showed that he was trying to fight the monster equally and doing some big hits and everything, and the monster just does this big slash that just, you know, maybe that's too bloody, but kills him with a big slap and he lands on the ground with a broken back, or something like that. Like he died through resisting instead of died being given up. It's like, oh, take my rings, and so that was, again, lackluster. Shang-Chi gets the rings, and then there's this battle, and it's chaotic, it's hard to follow, it's a monster fight now with monsters we don't really care about, and so that's all just kind of boring at this point, and then the big giant monster grabs the dragon, is about to suck out the dragon's soul, and they say if he gets the dragon's soul, he'll be unstoppable, and then the old guy with the bow goes with the girlfriend, we have to shoot its throat, otherwise, because reasons, if you shoot its throat, you'll be able to stop its soul sucking, even though it's a little arrow and a giant monster, but okay, sure. Old guy gets killed by one of the other little creatures that are, I don't know, the spawn of the bigger monster, and it's all up to the girlfriend. The girlfriend basically saves everyone because she shoots an arrow, which is an insanely far shot, with a bow that you would need such a bow, such insane draw weight to reach that distance. It's a magical bow, that's the only way you could explain it. have to be a magical bow because she should not have the capacity to pull that thing back with a day's friggin' training. But she does, and then that distracts or knocks the bad monster away aside to allow the dragon free, and then Shang-Chi sends his rings like into the evil monster, and they start to do this spinning thing, and he's doing this, and it's like, ha! And that's the ending command that he does. It's like, because the rings are away from him. They're doing this thing inside the monster, and so he does this move, which is like a physical motion that's a command for the rings to just rip it apart, and the monster gets ripped apart. It's like, yeah, okay, this doesn't have any emotional weight because we weren't shown the rings had really this capacity before. Like we don't know what the rings can do. And they're just like, they can do what needs to be done for the sake of the plot in any given time in the moment. That we aren't given the correct limitations, and so it doesn't strike us as a unique or interesting or creative way of the use of the rings in the bounds and limits that we were shown previously with this final move. In fact, this final move is a new move that we haven't seen the rings be done with anything that Shang-Chi can do because he's just better. Like, he's just better at his dad or something like that, and he has the combination of his dad's training and the magical bullcrap for village kung fu training. And the combination of that enables him to, I don't know, control the rings more to the point that he can send, because there was one point where he like got the rings to turn into this, it was going to be, I don't know, Kamehameha blast, but then he like doesn't, to show his dad that he isn't here. So he can just do things with the rings that other people can't because it's better. And so for that, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, he just kills them with the rings. It has no emotional weight. He doesn't feel like he did anything creative or special or overcome challenges to do it. He just did it. And then, yeah, the monster's dead, and they like celebrate. They the lantern things in the water or whatever to say goodbye to the fallen, and that movie basically rounds off and ends. And yeah, there's after credit scenes. You know, the guy from, I forget his name, is a Wu, I forget it, but from Doctor Strange says, we're basically recruiting you. You are now going to be part of it. We see a thing where it's Captain Marvel and a regular Bruce Banner. So Bruce Banner is no longer in his Hulk form, analysing the rings. They don't know where it's from, set up for perhaps plots later on, maybe Shang-Chi too. And also a final after credit scene of the sister overtaking the 10 rings and becoming the head of the organization, which is honestly in line with the character because she's a complete jerk through the whole movie and an a-hole, and with a dubious moral compass anyway. So that's the end of Shang-Chi. And it was pretty crap. Very crap. I would give it a 3 out of 10. Yeah, solid. I can maybe, just going through all the dumbness and stupidity, it just emphasizes more how dumb it is. And so you could even push me to a 2. But the thing is, there was some good fight scenes. Gotta give it that. Some good action fight scenes. And for a casual audience, as depressing as it is, I think a lot of people are actually going to enjoy it. Because if you turn your brain off, you might be able to just enjoy the flashy spectacle and cool fights. So that's been my thoughts on Shang-Chi and the Legend of the 5-10 Rings. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. But ultimately, yeah, it's a crap movie. It's bad. Thanks for watching the Game Nights. I hope to see you on the next Game Night video. So this has been Sir Shadrick of Versity of the Game Nights, wishing you a good night.